Feel like your faith just fell off a cliff after divorce? You're not alone. In this episode, we get brutally honest about what happens when your beliefs, your church, and even your family turn upside down, leaving you in spiritual freefall. If you've ever questioned everything you ever knew about God, doubt, or even your own worth, pull up a chair. There is real hope on the other side, and we're going to talk about that today. This season is called The First 365 Days After Divorce. And today I have with me my friend and fellow coach, Diana Swillinger. We're going to be talking about faith in free fall, when you don't know what you believe anymore after navigating spiritual confusion and even religious trauma and betrayal. And now maybe some of you haven't experienced that. Maybe you had a Christian community that just gathered around you and supported you all the way through your divorce process, and they still just wrap their arms around you in love. And if that's the case, Diana and I, we praise God for that, because
Yay!
that's the way it's supposed to be. That is
Yay.
the way it's supposed to be. That is Christian love in action. That is being the hands and feet of Jesus Christ in this world. And if you're in a community like that, we are so grateful. We'd love to, go ahead and drop me an email and tell us your stories, because we'd love to hear some positive stories. But unfortunately, Diana and I work with Christian women who have had the exact opposite experience, and literally thousands of them. Like, that is the norm, to not have that experience when you're going through divorce. And that can really shake up your faith. So that's what Diana and I are going to be talking about today, how we sort of work through that. Maybe we'll bring in some examples. Obviously, we're not going to tell you about specific people that we've coached or that we've worked with, but we'll bring overall high-level examples that we can offer to show that this is not just Diana's and my experience. This is across the board. This is the normal experience of Christian women and what they go through in their faith communities when they file for divorce. They not only lose their faith communities, but they often lose their families of origin. And something that I've noticed, and Diana, you'll have to tell me if you've noticed this too in your coaching, but many women end up losing their older children. Their older children end up cutting them off because they grew up in these environments surrounded by a faith community, and even both of their parents, who basically taught them the exact opposite of what getting a life-saving divorce is all about, and that is like the ultimate sin. And because they've been it's not their fault, they've just been programmed this way, and so they end up siding with the church or with the abusive husband. And these women who have poured their lives into their children, and a lot, sometimes even homeschooling them, giving up their careers to homeschool their children, and then they end up not having contact with their adult children or their grandchildren. And I have sat with women weeping in sorrow and agony because of that loss too. I'm going off on a rabbit trail, but I
Well,
can
let me
really,
just, yeah,
yeah.
but let me just add to that, because there's this other spot, and I probably coached more women in, for me, this has come up more. And it's where some of the adult children just get heavily boundaried, not boundaried because mom is doing something that's unhealthy for them, but because of judgments they have because of their ingrained religious beliefs. So it's just like, I want to do more with my kids, but they don't call me. They don't invite me over. It's just kind of holidays, and it feels very contrived. And so there's still some sort of relationship, but it doesn't feel healthy. And so, there's a lot of different, well, and then also I'll say, let me go back to off your rabbit trail, back to the trail. with the faith thing. There's a lot of in-betweens too. Like sometimes, well, maybe there's some people at church that aren't supporting you and you lose them, but then you find out who your real friends are because you have a pocket of people who do. Or some leadership doesn't, but some does. Like the women's ministry pastor is all with you and gives you resources, and the head pastor seems judgmental. Even in my case, which will probably come out as we talk, by the time I was going through divorce, I wasn't trying to go through it with my church. I just went through it with key friends. And so I didn't have issues. But I had spiritual betrayal through my church 10 years earlier for something different. And I learned my lesson then. So there's so many variations to this story, but I don't think Christian God-fearing women, I mean, God-fearing in the way that like we just love and respect our God and we want to honor him and do well by him and show him how much we love him through how we live our lives. It's almost impossible to go through divorce without having at least a minor crisis of faith, wondering, have I betrayed my oath to God? Have I betrayed my faith relationship with him, or is he disappointed? And
Yeah.
so even if it's not a huge explosion, free falling, we often face these crisis points. So I think everybody listening is going to relate to a lot of things that we talk about today.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Diana usually brings me back to center. I I tend to swing pendulums far to the
I
other
love,
side
okay, yeah,
and be
I
dramatic.
love rabbit trails, but there is a part of me that like holds on to core concepts. And so
Yeah.
even if like the rabbit trails are all tethered and I can see the connections and it's all good.
Yeah, yeah. Diana's like a coach's coach. Okay. So you always everyone needs someone like that in their life. All right. Okay, so here's the first question. When did you first notice that your faith no longer felt like home to you? And was it a slow unraveling or was it a single moment that kind of changed everything?
It was a slow unraveling for me. I think it's a unique experience for everyone. Sometimes, I mean, I also had a moment where I felt like the whole rug was pulled out. So it's so multifaceted. There's so many different layers. And so I had to start unpacking what do I really believe a long time ago. I just did a podcast this week on the Renew Your Mind podcast. I shared journal entries from when I quit drinking in 2010 and then the year after and I was married and I was in a difficult marriage and all of the beliefs I had shifting I had to go through for that. And so it's been slow in a lot of ways. And then let me say it this way. I use the Bible app.
Yeah.
I used to use the Bible app. Through all of this shifting of my faith, I still went in. I know I went in the app because it shows you when you're in. And then about a year after or maybe it was right around the time my divorce was final, I can go back and look, and it's right around a specific time I just dropped off from using the app
Mm.
and I stopped reading the Bible. And so that's a whole different. So, I mean, maybe that is a big moment for me. And I'm going to talk about it with some of the questions coming up. I have
Yeah,
some
okay.
notes where I'll
Okay.
hit that, but I guess I'll leave it there. There's a lot of different points in this journey, and you might notice them or you might not. You might have slow evolution, or you might also have points where it's like, whoa, something shifted. So for me, when I stopped drinking, several years after my sister died, and I really had to unpack my faith for that. And
Mm.
then the divorce probably was the most upsetting to the Jenga house of faith I had built all my life. And it suddenly felt very unstable.
Yeah, the Jenga house of faith.
Yeah.
I always think of it in terms of like a house of cards, right? Jenga, that's a new
There we
one.
go. We both picked unstable
Yeah,
houses,
exactly.
which is how we stack up our religious beliefs sometimes.
Yeah. Yes. And that's kind of what I was going to say is that mine was also a slow unraveling, not as far as my faith as a whole, but just all the little beliefs that I held on to. So it's like
Yes.
that Jenga metaphor, slowly I was pulling out these various beliefs, but still hoping that the tower would stand. But I think what the metaphor falls apart at that point anyways, anyhow, because my faith did always stand. I feel like there was a strong cord of faith in God throughout all of it. But what I had to unravel was, what God was I worshiping? I think I began to question God, the God I knew with a small g. I realized the God I knew had a small g. It was just like one of many gods that people worship in the world and all throughout history, that I was told or taught by my faith community was God with a big G. right? So and that happened as I began questioning the role of the church, because I was seeing the church modeling all the same abuse tactics that I was waking up to in my marriage relationship, because it's a pattern. I'm an INFJ, so if anyone's listening and knows Myers-Briggs, INFJs are big on patterns. We start noticing patterns, and then we start applying the pattern across the board. And whoa, my brain was just exploding. I was like, oh my gosh, that's this tactic, and that's that tactic, and that's the other tactic, and it's all the same as my marriage. And then when ultimately I was excommunicated, that was like the nail in the coffin of my trust in, it was like, okay, I not only divorced my husband, but I ended up, my church divorced me, really, while they were telling me that it was a sin and this terrible thing for me to divorce my husband, which I thought, fascinating. Like,
Yeah.
which is what abusers do. It's okay for them to be mean to you, but don't you dare be mean to them. It's okay for them to control you, but don't you dare try to say anything, give your opinion to them. Right. Well, that was the same thing with the church. And then I tried to find went to a lot of different other churches, and some of them I stayed for more than a year at, but I never did find my home base. But I will say this before we move on to the next question. My faith in God is stronger than ever, because my view of who God is completely was transformed. And I'm going to put a shameless plug in for my book, All the Scary Little Gods. So if any of what I'm saying or what Diana and I are saying resonate with you, if you want to see the slow unraveling in a story form, that book will give you that story. And I think so many people in the reviews on Amazon are like, oh my gosh, I could relate to just so many things throughout this book. It was like reading my own story. So if any of this resonates and you want to try that book out, I think it will be really helpful for you. Okay, next question. What messages, spoken or unspoken, did you receive about doubt growing up in your faith community? And how did those messages shape the way that you navigated your own spiritual confusion?
Yeah, I actually I had to think on this one for a while. I'm glad you sent me some of the questions you were considering ahead of time, because I was like, what did I learn? I don't even know. And then when as I thought about it and I wrote some things down, I wrote down like, well, I looked up like, where does it talk about doubting in the Bible, or what are doubting stories in the Bible? And then doubting Thomas,
Well, of course.
comes up right away. And I was like, oh yeah, doubting Thomas was bad.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to doubt like Thomas. That's bad. He was weak in his faith. That wasn't right. And so I think overall, I just thought, well, yeah, I think I got the general message that doubting's not right. Doubting is a threat to faith. Doubting is maybe the devil trying to confuse you. And then like whispering lies, and you're like, oh, you're doubting things now. And oh, well, that's not right. And so we need to have more faith. Don't let the enemy plant seeds of doubt. Just trust God. Like, don't worry about what you're thinking or feeling. Just trust God. And like, oh, Ephesians 5, put on the armor of God, and just stand strong in him. And there's nothing to doubt or fear. So I think those are the message I got overall. But as life went on, I have come to embrace doubt. And so where I used to think doubt was like the Jenga block that we were going to pull out that was going to make everything fall apart, I am now like, no, doubt are the bricks that I lay down one at a time and spend a lot of time with, and explore and enjoy and think about and ponder and partner with God to put in place. And I don't even need to have all the answers as I'm building this brick house. I don't know if this analogy is any good or not. That's why one of the things we love about each other. I love it. Okay. But I'm like, what if I build a house with doubts, where I can then trust God and have faith in God for all of it? And, there's more to it. It isn't a complete analogy. But it's like the older I get, the less I know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's wisdom, right?
Yeah,
I don't actually have the answer to that.
Yep.
What should they do about that? How should this be approached? How should we do this socially? What laws should be? I don't know. I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
I don't know what's right or wrong. It's not. Say it again.
I said, that's a beautiful place to be, I think.
Yeah.
It's a much more peaceful place to be, honestly.
Which is crazy. I thought it would be the scariest place to be. But
isn't it also the most faith-filled place to be?
It has to be.
You have to have faith. in order to, because if you already know everything,
Yeah,
how, and you have no doubts about anything, you don't need faith. You already
exactly.
are as the gods, knowing good and evil.
Exactly. So I am not dissing anyone, but I do have this um, way of looking at things now where I'm like, huh, the people who think they know everything about Christianity and faith, or more than me, are really relying on their house of cards.
Yeah.
The knowledge they're stacking up, thinking if I just stack up enough things I know, I'm going to have a strong faith. But that's not what it is. And when you said the Jenga thing, maybe it doesn't, maybe it's not the best analogy. I think the Jenga game and the house of cards, totally great analogy because our faith isn't those beliefs we're stacking on top. It's the foundation.
Right.
And that foundation, that's why we could explore all the little pieces of our card house, and our faith could still be solid underneath it all.
Yes. I think that's why people react when you do question things, because that's like you're wiggling out a little brick and they instinctively know deep down inside of themselves, because I believe we all have the Holy Spirit, the wisdom of the ages inside of us. We just don't always access it, but they instinctively know deep down in their wiser self that if you do that, that the tower will fall. But
Hmm.
the thing that we realized when all of those of us whose towers did fall is that that's the only way you can rebuild. That's the only way you can build, like you were talking about, that solid foundation. If you have to be able to let the tower fall and let God rebuild it in the way that he wants to.
Yeah,
So
but so many people in the church culture in the United States are terrified of us pulling out a Jenga block and our thing falling. They think that means we're going to go to hell or
right,
something,
right,
but
right.
it's not.
No. Well, and also that shows the kind of God that we're believing in, that when we believe those kinds of things, that God is up there like this vindictive judge who's just waiting for our tower to fall and then he's going to zap us and burn us forever and ever and ever. Well, that kind of God, I talk about that in the book, All the Scary Little Gods, because gosh, that's a scary little God. I don't,
Yeah.
that's not
One
my
who's sitting there
God.
judging all of our individual beliefs as our houses
Yeah.
and also if that's putting our faith into and our salvation into our own hands. If we can
Yes.
just build a good enough card house or Jenga tower,
Yep.
well, then everything will be okay. Well, that's putting all of it on us, where Jesus came to free us from that.
Exactly. That is not good news.
No.
And the Bible says that the gospel is good news. I used to think that doubt was something that you could have doubt for a short period of time, but doubt was thought of as the opposite of faith. And what you and I just talked about is that it's actually doubt is actually what you can't have faith if you don't have doubt, right? So
Yes.
it was questioning was viewed as something that immature Christians did, or those kinds of Christians who wanted to, they just want to rebel. They're trying to find an excuse to do what they want to do, all those sins that they want to do instead of what God wants them to do. And so anyone who questioned anything from whatever motive was suspect and shut down. I want to do a plug for two books right now. One is by Brian McLaren called Faith After Doubt. That book was really, really helpful for me and really helped to transform and shape the way my faith looks right now. And the other one is Love Wins by Rob Bell. Now, both of those books were considered, like, I heard people talk about them. They were heretical books in the circles that I ran in. But here's the thing. Even while people were talking about these books like they were heretical, I was thinking, well, you know what though? I mean, I read hundreds of books. I've read thousands and thousands of books in my lifetime, okay? And I had read hundreds of these other books that these people who said those books are heretical, don't read their books, read our books. So I did. I read hundreds of their books. And I just finally got to the place where I was like, I think I want to see what other Christians who also studied the Bible and who also love Jesus, I want to see what they have to say. And when I opened myself up to that, it was like a balm on my weary, anxious heart, because all these other books left me riddled with spiritual anxiety and depression and utter fear. and
The
shame.
not good news, not good
No,
news.
definitely not good news. And when I read things like Love, and I read a lot of other books, but these two come to the surface of my mind, Faith After Doubt and Love Wins, it was like, really? Really? Oh my gosh, this seems too good to be true. Is God really that big? Is he really that powerful? Does he really win? Or is it really okay for me to not know for sure what all the answers are?
And is it really okay for me to use my brain to think about things and ponder them? Or am I just supposed to follow the beliefs people present to me like a robot?
Exactly, exactly. And like, why, we're all, when I started getting older, when you're young, when you're a child, you think that your church is the only church in the universe. And then you get older and you get into high school and college and you find out that some people don't go to church and some people go to other churches like Lutherans and Catholics and Muslims and Jewish people. And you've got all these different things and you start realizing, oh, the world is a bigger place, but my way is the one, but my church is the best church. Baptist, that's correct.
Right.
Reformed
Right.
Baptist,
Right.
not even any other version of Baptist. It's just the Reformed Baptist. And you, and that's when you start to get into trouble, because every single religion, trust me, all the little children in all of the other churches are growing up thinking my church is the best church, my version of Baptist is the best church, my version of Lutheran is the best, my version of Catholic is the best, my version of, there's all kinds of different versions of uh
All of
Judaism.
them. Yeah,
Yeah,
all of
all of them.
them.
Yeah, all of them. You can just all of them that have different versions. Like they all branch out. If you looked at the whole thing, it would look like a gargantuan spider web of ideas. Which one is correct?
Yeah.
Yours? Really? Are we that egocentric that we have to believe, well, it's only mine that's correct? What if that's not true? What if God is bigger than that? What if God is implanting himself and invading this world in such a way and putting his truth, like someone's described it, like we're all feeling different parts of we're all blind, but we're feeling different parts of an elephant. And what if we've each been given a different part to explore, and we have a different facet of the diamond to explore? And how much more could we know of God and appreciate of God, of the multifacetedness and the greatness and the power and the beauty and the incredible infiniteness of God, if we learned, how do other people see God? How do other people worship God? How do other people make meaning of their lives on earth? So anyway, I just that expanded my view. Now I'm still, I still view myself in a certain way as far as what I believe, but I also don't, I'm just like, I have much more appreciation for what other people believe, and also am in more of a learner's mode. Like I can really learn. I have so much to learn. I'm never, ever going to learn everything before I die. There's no, how could you possibly? God is an infinite wealth of wisdom, right? So, but when I hear other ideas, I'm much more open to going, that is very fascinating. I never thought about that
Because
before.
your faith isn't relying on the house of cards.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So, all right. So, how did you handle the fear of getting it wrong or being spiritually lost, especially, when most of your life was built on certainty?
Well, it's funny. I have lots of friends who are coaches. I do a lot of stuff in the entrepreneurial space. And this one friend's a different kind of coach. She's not a Christian. The different kind of coach is she's like neuro linguistic programming, NLP coach, and she does a lot more like streams of consciousness type stuff. And there was that good Christian girl inside of me thinking, this is a little bit too out there. I probably shouldn't be doing this. I'm probably going to get brainwashed. But I ended up coaching with her last year, and because the first time she did a free coaching thing with me, she's like, "Did you notice that you've been saying that you're lost a few times?" And this was just last year, and I was like, "Huh, I didn't notice that." And then I decided to do a package of coaching with her, and then the first session, she's like, "There it is again. You said I'm lost. What does that mean?" And I think that what I've come to land on with this feeling of lost that I had last year was that my religious views totally changed. And I don't remember exactly how you phrased the question, so I might just be going off here on my own rabbit trail. But what happened at the end of this, or during this time, I don't remember the exact timeline. I haven't been journaling the last few years, so who knows? But mixed in there, I decided I just need to let go of, and I didn't think of the Jenga. I thought but I can use that analogy now. I thought of like, I'm just holding on. I imagine myself holding on to Jesus' robe, like really, really tight. I'm just like the rest, so many of my cultural Christian beliefs since I've gotten divorced have fallen off. Like, does God hate divorce? I don't know. It doesn't really say that in the Bible, except in mistranslations. It says God hates when the man sends his wife off without a divorce certificate and doesn't care for her. And that's nasty. Okay. And yes, does God hate marriages falling apart? Why not? It's really painful. It's a ripping apart. It's rough. But so all those beliefs were shifting and falling away. And I felt like all that was left is I was just hanging on to Jesus' robe for dear life. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't just hang on. I have to let go. And and so one day I'm like, that's it, Jesus. I'm letting go. And I don't know what that's going to mean. And so in the Jenga thing, this was, I'm pulling out the one block that's going to make my house fall. And I have no idea what's going to be left after that. And I kind of imagine being in a rough sea storm and letting go of Jesus' robe. And I imagined he might just like float away and go be with other people. And then I'll just be in the rough waters alone.
Wow.
But I felt a peace about it, and I did it, mentally. This is a mental experience, emotional, soulful experience. I was just sitting in a chair, but I let go, and I didn't really feel anything except I'd say the rest of that day, my emotions were just more like flatlined,
Yeah.
and I just went through the motions of the day, and nothing major happened. And then I woke up the next day, and I just heard or knew I'm here. And I was like, what? Jesus, you're right here. I let go and you didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so what happened in that is all whatever clutching to beliefs or feeling like I had to put in all this effort into my faith to keep it and keep it alive, I didn't have to do that anymore. That felt like freedom.
Yeah.
Like Jesus, I never faltered in my belief of who Jesus was yesterday, today, and tomorrow, who God is, Holy Spirit in my life. It was all of the structure, religious structure in my faith tower that I let go of. And it was terrifying.
Yeah.
And Jesus was still there.
Yeah. Yeah. How I would describe that is let go of your version of
Yeah.
Jesus. And then you
Yes.
discovered that Jesus himself was actually all there all along.
Yes.
Yeah. I think for me, I decided that what I had been believing produced, and I observed it had produced so much really bad fruit, like destructive fruit in my own life and in the lives of my kids that and the lives of people that I was watching how they were living their lives, Christians who were living their lives as good Christians, but they weren't really showing up in ways that Christ showed up. I knew that wasn't right. So I had already been spiritually brainwashed and lost, and I was certain in that spiritual brainwashing and lostness. I was certain about that. So then when I let all of that go, I was ready to truly trust God in the uncertainty. And I feel like that is more has been for me has been so much more in alignment with what love is. It means that I can then hold space for uncertainty in other people. Because I have
Yeah.
a couple of kids who are it's not they're not just like, I don't know if my faith is really, I don't know really know where my faith is. They're not like that. They're like, I don't want to have faith in anything. Like, I have faith in nothing. I watched what faith does to people. I want nothing to do with it. But I can hold space for that because I know, like you were saying, they maybe have let go of God, but God is intertwined with them. That's the good news. That's what Jesus came for. That's the good news. That's actually the good news. Did they experience it? Are they experiencing that right now? No, because they don't believe. When we don't believe, we can't experience, right? We have to
Yeah.
actually believe it to experience it. So right now they're not experiencing it, but that doesn't mean that it's not true. When the clouds are covering the sun, I'm not experiencing the sun. That doesn't mean the sun's not there shining down on me. I just don't experience it. But so anyway, that's kind of how I think of it.
Yeah.
In the middle of spiritual free fall, what did you most long to hear from God, or maybe even the people around you? And did you feel like you received it?
Well, my answer is super short here because it's just a follow up to that story. I knew I just wanted to know God was there.
Yeah.
And that's what I got when I let go of Jesus and that. And I've had a few other times in my life where I've doubted and been okay with doubting. And that's always just what I want to hear at the end. I want to hear like it's real or I'm here. And yeah, I got that. So in fact, this last time, I feel like it was so dramatic because I got emotional. Dramatic story I just told you about letting go of Jesus. That's what I got in the end, just a simple I'm here. And it was the absolute best thing. And I think this is probably the biggest, it's the only time I actually let go of everything.
Hmm.
And if the result of it is Jesus is just still here, like I don't know what's going to shake my faith ever again.
Yeah.
But I also have freedom to explore so many things. And I know I think he's for it. I think he's like, I gave you a creative mind. I gave you critical thinking. I want you to grow. I want you to, come to your own conclusions. I want you to have your own experiences. Go for it. Doubt it. Think about it. Try this, try that, whatever. I'm just here. I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. He knows the end of the story. You're just in the middle of it. So
Yeah.
why wouldn't the middle of every great story is always messy?
Yeah.
And he's a great storyteller. Why would he not be in on that? Or
Right.
like be all in on that, right?
So tell me what you wanted to hear.
I wanted to hear, well, I love what you wanted to hear too. I guess mine is a version of that. Just, I love you. I wanted to hear, I love you and you're good and you're worthy of love. You're valuable. You belong. And I didn't hear that from the people around me, but ironically, that because I didn't hear it from the people around me, that's why I think that's how I heard it loud and clear from God. And I had to let go of trying to get that from other people in order to hear that from God, I think, and to find my hope and peace in God alone. And when I say that, that does not mean that as Christians, well, we don't need to offer that to other people because God will give it to them, right? Or even that we don't need to get that from one another. I think we do need to get that from one another. But I wasn't at the time. I wasn't worshiping in circles or had a religious community around me that had the capacity or the experience or the understanding of that. We weren't getting taught that from anywhere around us, and so people didn't know. They were unknowingly hurting me, right? So I had nothing to go by for myself, and I had nobody to model it. But I had to be the one to learn it. And now I see my job is I need to, like, it's okay. They're not that they don't do that for one another or weren't able to do that for me. And hopefully in their spiritual evolution, they'll get to that place. But for me, I see it as now it's my job, even though people didn't carry that mantle for me, it's my job to follow in the footsteps of Christ and offer that to other people. And I love to imagine a world in which where our faith communities offer that to one another, because the Bible says they're going to know that you are Christ followers by the love that you have for one another. So when the world sees, oh, look at, they kick people out. Ooh, better be careful about going to that church. If you get divorced, you get kicked out unless you repent in dust and ashes. You know, that's not love. The world knows that. Even though the Christians in the church said, well, we are doing this because we love you. No, the world looks at that and goes, no, I don't think that's love. I don't think I'm going to go to that church. That sounds scary to me. I don't want to get kicked out of anyone's love circle. But imagine a church that doesn't do that. Imagine a church that loves you no matter what and that embraces you no matter what and holds space for you to walk through your own spiritual journey. Well, I can't make that happen. I think there are churches like that out there. I can't make that happen. But who do I want to be in this world in which I don't really see that happening very much? Well, it starts with me. I have to be someone who does that. I am the church of Jesus Christ. Me. I'm the one that has to do this. That gets to do this. I shouldn't say has to,
Yeah.
gets to. And I think the more that you experience that from God, it just busts open in a fountain and it just naturally comes out of you to other people. But again, you have to be willing to be loose in your thinking and not be like, well, I know what's right and what's wrong, and you are apparently doing what's wrong, and I'm going to save you by telling you right now what you're doing is wrong and it's leading to perdition. And so therefore you need to do A, B, and C, or else I just can't
You,
be around
you
you.
know why they tell you that is because they have a house of cards for their faith.
Yes.
And they're afraid if you do something that's not in line with their house of cards, that their house could fall. And they don't want that because that's scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so how did your experience of religious betrayal, you mentioned yours was really, you had a couple of
Yeah.
experiences before your divorce. How did those experiences impact your ability to trust yourself or your own spiritual intuition or even your sanity? I feel like it impacts our ability to think that am I even on the right planet? Is it me?
Yeah. Well, I I think some people think I'm a confident person, and then here's why maybe because I go through something like this. So it was 10 years before I left my marriage, I guess. And I had an incident, I've always been shy about saying this, probably just because of my own shame, but I went on a mission trip. I'm just going to say it because who cares, right? I'm just living authentically now. But I was on a mission trip and there was a man on the mission trip that I felt some attraction to, and nothing happened. But the pastor's wife was on the trip and she picked up on some I don't know, just that we were talking more or being friendly. And so she asked me about it, and then I was honest about it. I said, yeah, I am kind of feeling attracted to him. But nothing happened. But when I came home, well, she told her husband, the pastor, and then he got involved, and then he got the elder board involved. And
And
then
you know what, Diana? That happens all the freaking time on trips like that.
yeah.
But people don't necessarily
Well,
come out and be honest about it,
plus,
right?
my marriage was, I didn't realize how bad my marriage was. I had my own house of cards about my marriage, and I thought it was in a better place than it was. But there was really a lot of unhealthy things happening, including emotional abuse and other things. Um, and I needed to do a lot of healing. I wasn't sober at the time. I was on and off with drinking, and so I was definitely in an unhealthy place. And so part of me is like, it's good that I got stripped of things so I could just focus on me and not have the burden of being a worship leader at the church. They took me out of that and they had a worship team meeting where I was publicly called out, not with details, just
Oh my God.
non-specifics about me, but in front of everybody. And I should have just left the meeting, but I stayed through it. And then they had tried to mandate me to go see a specific counselor of their choosing. And it was extremely painful. And I felt publicly shamed. And the confident part of me knew that this was blown way up out of proportion and it wasn't me and I wasn't crazy. Did I have things to work on? Yes. But I grabbed myself a copy of a book called The Subtle Power of Spiritual Abuse, which Natalie, if you haven't read that one, take a look at
Yeah,
that
I
one.
have. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good one.
I dog-eared and underlined a third or more of the book. And it really helped get me through that time because I could see what was happening. And yet it didn't take away the pain. So anyway, that was a long road. Let's see, what was the question? How did my experience impact my ability to trust myself? It helped me work on trusting myself more.
Yeah.
And it helped me strengthen my own spiritual intuition as well. And it did help me grow in the idea that I'm not crazy. And this is wrong. And all of that came in handy later when I needed all of that same stuff to get through unhealthy parts and eventually the end of my marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was one of the most painful things I've ever been through in my entire life.
I just want to, because I feel like this needs to be normalized for people. But when you're in an emotionally abusive marriage where there's so much neglect going on and where you feel the lack of love, or, like you feel like a nobody and a nothing in that relationship, for women, God made us this way. I'm sorry, but this is the way God wired us. If a man, it doesn't, because this was my experience. Any man in my church who showed me any ounce of kindness,
Yeah, he was kind
or
and he paid attention to me.
exactly, it doesn't have to be, I mean, the sexual aspect of it for me didn't even cross my mind. Just the kindness. I was just so hungering for kindness and praise of any kind, because I worked my butt off and got nothing.
Yeah.
So any man, I had a crush on all kinds of men who
Yeah.
offered.
And so when I say I was attracted to him, I wasn't like, oh, I want to have an affair with him. I was
Exactly.
like, I love talking to him.
Yes.
It
Because
feels good to sit next to him and have a conversation.
yes, exactly. It's so interesting because I think everything is so sexualized. And, and I say that in religious circles.
Yes.
There's such a we'll be talking about sex. Is it next week? I can't remember. Anyway, coming up, there's going to be a thing on
Yeah, it's
sex.
going to be awesome.
Well, I don't, who knows? I'm kind of scared, but
No, I
anyway.
think it's going to be interesting for sure. You're not going to want to miss the sex episode.
Anyway, I think people assume that because you have an attraction to someone, that and maybe for some people it is just a sexual attraction. But for me, my experience, and when I've talked to other women who've experienced this, and a lot of women have in these relationships, it isn't about sex. It is just about, I just want someone to care about me.
Yeah.
I just want to be seen. I just want to be who I am. We feel dead inside, and someone being nice to us makes us feel like maybe we have a a right to be alive. Maybe we are a worthy individual of love and attention, right? So I don't know. I think I'm with you. I was groomed not to trust myself before. So having religious betrayal didn't impact my ability to trust myself, because I already didn't trust myself.
Yeah.
For me, that experience, that betrayal, opened the door for me to discover that it wasn't myself I couldn't trust. It was them I couldn't trust. So again, my healing came from the rejection. The rejection was the perfect petri dish to experience the metamorphosis that I needed all along. All right. So, were there any practices, prayers, or anything that comforted you or kept you tethered to hope in your darkest hours?
Yeah, so this is the Divorced Woman podcast. And when we're talking about our darkest hours, for me, it was that spiritual betrayal. And while I have done a loosening up of my grip on faith now, back then I didn't. I was reading, and it gave me a lot of comfort. I read my Bible every day. I was journaling and I was writing music. There's a song I sang, one of the biggest, most important songs I wrote during that time. Yeah, I wrote it in 2010. This was right when, oh no, this was a couple years after the spiritual betrayal. And this was right when I quit drinking. And I'll just read a couple words, but just so poetry or writing songs, I mean, for me, it was songs, was super healing. And, it was me owning my relationship with God and finding my place in this world of pain, like having a greater hope. That's what you mentioned, hope. But just the first four lines: in my darkest hour, I wrote, moment by moment, step by step, I will abide in you. I won't worry what is next. Right here, right now is all I have left. I'm depending on you, Lord, for each new breath. And then it just goes on, lead me on. It's dark and far from home, but I don't need to see the distant shore. One step is enough. I need no more. And so I just had to really lean into, and chose to really lean into being in the moment, because that is all we have, isn't it? We don't
Yes.
really know what's happening tomorrow, and the past is over. And I'm like, I'm okay. I'm here right now with you, God. And so as I leaned into that stuff, and I was more heavy into spiritual practices then than I am now. And that's okay, by the way. My
Yeah.
faith is solid. So don't worry about me, y'all. But but that really, for that time, that's exactly what I needed to pull me through the darkest hours. I was just tightly bound up with God in his love and embrace.
Yeah. Yeah. In flying in the kaleidoscope that we have, it's our community of women, um, survivors, both divorced and not divorced. We have a place where people can drop their art because what you said, like you're a singer, you're a music person. So for you, writing music was helpful. For me, just writing, I'm a writer. So for me, writing was helpful. Um, but other people have dropped, we have this place where they can drop their art or their poems or their whatever, or take pictures of, their quilts or whatever
Yeah.
helps them to process. But I think we're made in the image of God, and God is like infinitely creative. We're all creative people. And I think expressing our creativity in the way that we love to do it the best is a very healing practice for us. And so to piggyback off of what you said, though, I was like you, did all the practices. I was a daily prayer, journaled daily, read the Bible daily, read Bible devotions, did Bible studies. So what helped me was actually to stop doing, and to start being in the presence of God. Like you were talking about, just this moment. I am
Yeah.
with God right now. Practice knowing that God is with me. The Bible says, be still and know that I am God.
Look, it's
That's
right up here. What does it say? Be still, my soul, my sign says right there.
exactly. It's knowing. And part of that was, believe it or not, as blasphemous as this might sound, part of it was hooked into learning to know and love something that God, something really, really precious that God created. And her name was Natalie. And that healed me more than anything else. We have in the kaleidoscope, we have like these basic courses that you get if you join Flying Free. One of them is spiritual abuse recovery. Another one is Bible flippers, which takes Bible verses and that you were maybe taught meant this, and then it flips them and shows you how actually it really meant this. It's often the opposite of what you were taught that it meant, which is kind of a plot that the enemy likes to do to us, right? He likes to twist the truth. And then another one, that I think is powerful is healing your relationship with God, that course. And then in Flying Higher, which is the more advanced courses, we're actually going through live Bible studies right now, every other Sunday. And we're using the Mirror Bible translation. And it has been absolutely profoundly life changing for those of us who are going through it. Because that translation, number one, I have read tons of different Bible translations through many times. So and the way that they read, you're so familiar with it, you can just kind of fill in the rest of the verse sometimes. But, and I'm so used to being programmed with the certain interpretations of these verses. Whereas the Mirror Bible translation it's a translation that goes, it trans, oh gosh, I'm not even gonna say it because I didn't prep for this, but it is an incredible translation that opens up your eyes to seeing the actual literal good news of what God came to do in this world through Christ. And it has been so healing for me and for the women that have gone through it, who really did grow up doing all of those things, reading the Bible and doing all the things that you're supposed to do. I couldn't read the Bible for a long time because of how it had been twisted to abuse me, but this Mirror Bible, for myself and the women going through it, is giving us a new lease on like what the Bible really is and what God really is trying to communicate to the world through the Bible. And it's just so much more in alignment with, I don't know, with a much greater God and a much more loving God, and a God who actually wins in the end, instead of a God who, well, he did his best, but most people will still be going to hell, right?
Bad news.
I know, very bad news. All right. we probably need to wrap this up. Let's see. Looking back, what would you say to the version of yourself who used to be terrified to ask hard questions about God or about church or about truth? What would you say to yourself back then?
Yeah, I think since we're wrapping up, I think this is a good summarizing answer because the way I think of it is, well, or what I tell myself is, it's okay to doubt it all of it, because God is unchanging. Your mind shifting will not change him. The
Yes.
Jenga house falling will not change him. It
Yes.
only makes room for you to change for the better. So you can have more love in your life, more love for yourself and more love for others, more love for God, more compassion for yourself, more compassion for others, more fruits of the spirit. And so let it go. It's okay to doubt it all. You can let go of anything you want to, and it's going to be okay.
Yes. I would say the same thing. And just that I would say, little Natalie, you are normal. You are wise because you have the Holy Spirit living inside of you. And also, it's humble to actually stop being a know it all.
Yeah.
Let people be who they are. God has them. God has them. Let them be who they are. And then you decide who you want to be. It's okay to cut ties. It's okay to let people go. And it's okay to find fresh water to swim in that's not going to kill you or drown you. And and I think that God just has brought me from a place of extreme religious anxiety and trauma and disconnection from love to a place of greater peace and rest. Now, obviously, it's a journey, right? It's not like I'm Zen all the time. If you talk to my kids, they tell you, no, my mom's not Zen all the time. But because I still have anxiety, I will probably struggle with anxiety in general for the rest of my life. But I don't have spiritual anxiety anymore like I used to. I feel like that really did get, for the most part, pretty healed. There are hard things. There are going to be hard things in your life, always, always, because we live on planet Earth. But no matter what, you are tethered to Christ, not because of anything that you've done, little Natalie, or anything that you will do, but only because of who Christ is, and that he actually, the news actually is truly good.
Amen to that.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Divorced Christian Woman podcast. I think I didn't prep, I didn't look ahead.
It's sex next time.
Is it sex next time?
It's the sex panel. Is it okay I'm calling it
Yeah.
that?
I had one person was going to come on the panel, and then she realized that it was about sex, and she said, I don't think I want to be on that panel. But everyone who's coming on the panel is says they want to be there. So next time, join us next week for a conversation about sex. I'm scared.
It's going to be
We'll
okay.
see you then. And until then, fly higher.